What is your crazy ex-girlfriend/boyfriend stories? Sit yourself down. I have quite the tale. I had a girlfriend who was a serious problem drinker. And when I say problem drinker, I mean every single time she drank, it was a problem. For some reason, she thought she had the liver of a god and would chug liquor whenever my back was turned. She would be blackout drunk within 20 to 30 minutes of going out, and I usually had to have a friend help carry her home. On top of that, she acted like a child the entire time. One night, I laid her down and went to get her a cup of water. When I left the room, she got up, ran out the back door, down the street to a random house, opened their front door, and passed out in their hallway. I went looking for her, and someone shouted out a window, "Hey, are you XX? I have a very friggin' drunk crazy bitch up here. She's passed out and keeps saying your name." I had to enter their home, pick her up off the couch, and carry her back to my place. Most people would have broken up with her at this point, but I thought that if I could keep her off the booze, things might work out. Here's where the classic advice comes in. Don't go into a relationship expecting to change someone. Heed it. Please, heed it. Whenever I wasn't around, she'd take the opportunity to get wasted. She would call me, break up with me, while blackout drunk, then forget about it. I'd remind her, she'd apologize and ask for me back. And like a total idiot, I'd always take her back. Eventually, I got fed up and didn't take her back one time. This led to a full-blown temper tantrum when I went to her apartment to pick up my stuff. She blocked the door, refusing to let me leave. I tricked her by saying I'd consider staying with her. Once she moved, I told her it was a lie and that I was leaving. She grabbed my leg, the kind of thing a 5-year-old does. I warned her to let go, and she didn't. This was all happening in the hallway of a Manhattan apartment building. I started walking, dragging her along with my foot until she finally let go. I made it out. The next day, one of her guy friends called, saying he was going to come beat me up. Why? She told him I held her by neck, hit her, and threw her on the floor, scrapes on her knees as proof. I told him that if he came near my property, I'd call the police. He never did. Not surprising, he was all mouth, no balls. For a few glorious days, I didn't hear from her. Life felt like being reborn. I went to a party, met someone, and ended up sleeping with her. A few days later, I got a call from my ex, screaming and crying about how I cheated on her. Cheated? After she broke up with me. Classic. She even dragged her family into it, sending emails and texts calling me scum. That's when I discovered that Verizon lets you block numbers. Finally, the calls stopped. The texts stopped. All contact was broken off. One of her friends even tried to reach me on her behalf, and I told them that if she continued trying to involve herself in my life, I'd get a restraining order. And that was the end of that chapter. Story 2. She told me that she was sleeping with my neighbors because I got home from work really late and she needed attention. She was terrified of other women. If any other women spoke to me or got within a 5-foot radius of me, she would rage. She faked panic attacks. She faked an asthma attack to avoid taking the blame for something she had done. She was incredibly racist and homophobic. Her self-esteem would plummet if she felt people were giving her the "you're not good enough for him" look, according to her. She took it upon herself to contact my parents and introduce herself as my fiancé, even though she wasn't. Edit. There were also group stuffs that I only found out about after we dated. Fake pregnancy scares if she thought I was going to break up with her, and fake hospital visits that required me to leave work immediately because she claimed something was wrong and needed me at the hospital. I could go on for a while. And yes, I was an idiot for staying with her. Story 3. My ex-girlfriend got pregnant. We decided we weren't ready or mature enough for children. I was 21, she was 20, so we chose to terminate it. We discussed it and quickly agreed that we would never tell anyone. It was our secret. Fast forward several weeks and we were growing more distant. We decided to break up. We were no longer living together, and neither of us was happy, so the breakup seemed like it might actually go smoothly. However, I always felt guilty about the abortion. She would bring it up several times over the next year as an excuse whenever she needed a ride or some help. We still hooked up occasionally, but we were definitely not back in a relationship. We had a large group of mutual friends who had been her friends first, and I stayed away from them for a while until almost all of them reached out saying they didn't care that we broke up and still wanted to be friends. The way she used the abortion against me started to take a toll, and the guilt I felt weighed heavily. Then, one of our mutual friends who was close to both of us decided to tell me the truth. Apparently, she had been cheating on me the entire time we were together, mostly with our friends, her exes, and a few other guys she knew. She ended up cheating on me and getting pregnant by another guy. When she told him what happened, he changed his phone number and joined the Navy. Yeah, she was that crazy. Instead, she told me it was mine, knowing I had never suspected her of cheating. When she told me about the pregnancy, I specifically asked if she had been with anyone else, and she said no. I later found out that 4 of my friends had known the truth the whole time but thought I'd be better off not knowing. Realizing I had been made a fool of, I decided to confront her in front of people. When she walked into the house we were all in, I asked, "Whose baby was it?" Because I know it wasn't mine. She admitted everything. We went outside at the time because frankly, outing her in front of everyone was enough satisfaction. In the 2 years we were together, she cheated on me with at least 20 different guys, so many that she couldn't even remember half their names. We didn't see her for several months. I didn't go around spreading the story, but several friends eventually came up to me and admitted they had hooked up with her. She had been telling every guy who knew me that we had broken up, and they either believed her or didn't care. Fast forward a few more months. I walked into a party where she was telling a girl that her ex-boyfriend forced her to get an abortion against her will. I told the entire party very loudly exactly what had happened between us. At that moment, I realized she was just outright crazy. Story 4. So she and I had been having issues for about 2 years. It started out slowly, like we'd fight once a month over little things and sometimes big things. I figured it was normal growing pains after a year in a relationship. It kept getting worse. She wanted to fight over every single little thing. I eventually told her I was going to get her an iPhone for her birthday. As a college student, I couldn't afford a new one, but I wanted to get her a nice used iPhone 4 since the iPhone 5 had already come out and I could afford one. Well, she freaked out, asking if I thought she wasn't good enough for the iPhone 5. These were the kinds of little things she wanted to fight about. If I told her I loved her 5 times in a day, she'd be upset that it wasn't 6 times. I kid you not. Finally, I was fed up. One day, I got mad and just went home, since I had a quiz to study for and some exams. I told her not to talk to me for a few days and to let me figure things out on my own. That wasn't good enough for her. She kept emailing, calling, and texting me. She even messaged my siblings, trying to find out what I was doing at all times, even though I didn't live at home and they didn't know. Finally, Sunday rolls around. I was sick and tired of the constant emails and texts. I picked up my phone after a day or so to tell her to leave me alone. I answered and said, "Hey." She responded, "Colts, Blazers, I think someone is chasing me." Then she hangs up. So what would you do? Would you drive 30 minutes to her house to make sure she's okay? Would you call the cops and give them all her information, description, address, everything? If you said yes, then you did exactly what I did. I started getting really creepy texts from her cell phone. Texts asking me, "Do you want her back?" She looked lonely. I was terrified that something horrible was happening, that she was being essayed, hurt, anything. I was driving 80 miles per hour on back roads trying to get to her from my school. I even got a call from the cops asking if I thought it was a prank. All I could say was, "God, I hope not." I finally made it to her town and started looking everywhere for her. She eventually called and said they had let her go. I told her I was in town and asked where she was. She told me not to worry about it and to go home. I was confused but kept pressing. She finally told me where she was. I picked her up and told her we were going to talk to the cops. She refused, saying she wanted to go home. When we got to her house, the cops were already there waiting. I was terrified that something horrible had happened to her. An officer talked to her alone for about 15 minutes, then came back and handed me his card, asking me to call when we were done talking. I sat down with my girlfriend and asked her what happened. The first words out of her mouth were, "Colts, Blazers, would you be mad if I told you I lied?" Eventually, she admitted she had lied. I got up, had a few choice words, and left. I went back the following week to return some of her things and told her never to call, email, or talk to me again. That's right, she faked her own kidnapping. Story 5. My first real girlfriend was when I was about 16, and she was 15. We only dated for 3 months, and she said, "I love you," after about 2 months. I thought maybe she didn't mean it like that and kept dating her. She started reading my texts when I left my phone out, deleting girls' numbers, including my then 29-year-old sister's, because she was bat crap. I wasn't texting girls anything flirty, mainly about practice or class, and usually they were the ones reaching out to me. Nonetheless, she freaked out about everything. She told teachers and friends that I was hers. She started calling my parents mom and dad. She said she was pregnant because her period was a day late after we did stuffs that did not involve my dong. She even told her mom that I should move in with her. Like I said earlier, bat crap. So I dumped her, and she told me she swallowed a bottle of pills because she could never date another guy. I freaked out and drove over, only to find her lying in her bed with candles lit, not wearing anything. I was so pissed I left and tried to erase her from my life. She followed me, called me without saying a word, and I left voicemails without responding. She'd send texts like, "I will have your back." Then I got a new girlfriend, and she threatened her, calling her a bitch and saying I deserved her. Crazy Katie, see what I did there? Began hurting herself and showing the school what I supposedly made her do. She still sends me messages, and whenever I come home from college, she still drives by my house. Story 6. I used to date a girl in high school who would constantly tell me she was contemplating self-harm. At first I thought she was serious, but after a while I realized she just wanted attention. She would hurt herself by leaving scratch marks on her arms, then wear tank tops in the middle of winter and sit with her arms outstretched on the table so people would notice and comment. We broke up after a year, but she only got crazier. A couple of years later, she started dating a friend of mine and would stalk him relentlessly. One of his favorite stories was when they got into a fight and didn't talk for about a week. Apparently, she went to his house one day and was let in by his parents. She made up a story about waiting for him to come home so they could talk. She went into his room, started cutting up all his clothes with a pair of scissors she had brought, and then left. Later that week, while he was brushing his teeth, he bent over to spit out the toothpaste. When he stood up again, she was standing behind him, looking at him in the mirror like something out of a horror film, then ran out crying hysterically. After a few more of those crazy episodes, my friend decided to cut her off completely. But it gets worse. Fast forward a couple of years, my crazy ex is now dating another guy I know. They stay together for a while, but he soon realizes that she is unstable and decides to break up with her. She refuses to accept it. She waits outside his house every day and calls him constantly, trying to talk to him. This continues for a couple of weeks until he tells her to leave him alone and stop contacting him. She cannot handle it, and the stalking escalates. On average, he receives 30 to 50 calls a day from her, along with literally hundreds of texts. She is always sitting outside his house, waiting for a chance to talk to him, driving him to the point where he obtains a restraining order against her. A week later, she breaks into his home, and he finds her sitting on his couch waiting for him. He calls the police, who remove her from the property, and she ends up spending the weekend in jail. But it gets worse. She starts telling people she is pregnant and even goes with one of her cousins to get a sonogram twice. Both times, the doctors tell her she is not pregnant. She insists they are wrong and claims that due to her brittle bone disease, the baby is lodged somewhere inside her rib cage, which is why it could not be seen on the sonogram. Word of this spreads, and even her friends give up trying to help her. The craziest part is that after a couple of weeks, she actually begins to form a belly. She sends pictures of her stomach to friends and family to prove she is pregnant, but she is not. Apparently, there is a psychological disorder where a woman can convince herself she is pregnant and start showing physical signs even though she is not. Last I heard, she is forcing her family to throw her a baby shower in April and is supposedly due later that month. Story 7. My high school girlfriend told me she had cancer after our first date. She asked me not to tell anyone and said her parents would get really upset if it was mentioned, so I didn't talk about it with anyone. I dated her for 6 months. She made herself anorexic to appear sickly. Once I started making friends, no one understood why I was with her, but I kept her secret. Well, I finally put 2 and 2 together after she told me she was going in for chemo on a Monday. She said she wouldn't be at school for at least a week. I caught her trying to hide from me before first class and asked her how her chemo went. She said it went so well that all her hair fell out, but they sewed it back together and sewed the wig to her head. Yeah, she was a special one. Story 8. My girlfriend told me the week before I left for college that I had gotten her pregnant, knowing we were not going to continue dating long distance. She sent me a picture of a stock photo of a positive pregnancy test that she had cropped. I literally just searched positive pregnancy tests on Google, and it was one of the first images. I made her come over and take another test. It was negative, and she left. Story 9. I dated hands down the craziest girl I have ever met in my life. She is still in federal prison until at least 2022, and I guarantee that the parole board will get a letter from me every year detailing exactly what she did to me. Our relationship started out normal, just like any other. I met her at a party my friend Steve was having at ASU. It was Steve's 21st birthday, but he had already been banned from many of the bars in the area for getting caught with fake IDs. He would always get the cheapest fake ID he could find, and they never worked. The rest of us paid an extra $50 to get a more authentic one from a guy who claimed he had swiped a machine from the DMV. I was still using mine at 27 because I lost my real ID when I accidentally put it into one of those ATMs that keeps the card. I was drunk and did not realize it was not my debit card. When I entered my PIN incorrectly 3 times, the machine kept my license. At least that is what the bank employee told me. I think he was lying and just did not want to check the machine for my license. Story 10. I have 2. The first was a woman I had been seeing for a few months. I was 21, and she was 24 with a son who was about 2 years old. She seemed normal, had a good job, and took care of her child. She was not very bright though. I was bored in the relationship and did not want to become a stepfather, so I ended it. No problem. About a month later, I ran into her at a bar, and we went back to her place. The next morning, she made coffee and breakfast. I went to school, and she went to work. On the way to school, I became extremely sick and threw up multiple times. I barely made it there, still vomiting, found the nurse's office, and vaguely remember being put into an ambulance. I woke up in the hospital. A doctor told me I had overdosed on a massive amount of meth and had about 5 minutes left to live before they figured it out. There were also federal agents there to talk to me. It turned out she had planned the whole thing and decided that if she could not have me, no one could. She went to jail, but received a reduced sentence for cooperating against the family member who was producing and distributing the meth. The second one was not as serious. I dated someone casually for a few weeks and decided she was not right for me, so I ended it. About a week later, she called and said I had given her gonorrhea. I went to the doctor, got tested, and the results came back negative. Later, I realized it was just revenge for the breakup. She had even considered telling me she was pregnant and asking me to pay for an abortion, but her best friend talked her out of it. I probably would have paid the money. Story 11. When I broke up with my ex, he became so hysterical that the only way he would let me leave him was if we continued to be best friends after the breakup. Not just any kind of best friends either. He wanted me to come over for sleepovers and still share his bed. He told me that any other guy I dated afterward had to be 100% okay with this or I would not be allowed to date him. Story 12. I have a few stories that might be relevant, which I will share if this becomes popular enough. But here is one that may not be relevant, though it is memorable. It was my 18th birthday, and as a newly minted adult, I decided to celebrate by getting as drunk as possible. I was at a pub in town with about 6 friends, gathered around a table. A couple of tables away, there was a group of about 6 girls. One of them caught my eye. She was stunning, with long red hair, bright blue eyes, and full pink lips. I looked away and continued drinking, but we kept catching each other's eyes. We did that thing where you both notice the other looking, then quickly pretend you were not, only to keep doing it. Eventually, I went to the bar for another drink and noticed she was doing the same. She was short with a great figure. By that point, I was completely infatuated with her, and we had not even spoken. At the bar, I let her order first. She chose something like lemonade, which seemed unusual for that pub, but I assumed she might be the designated driver. I ordered a pint, turned around, and found her standing right behind me. We started talking, and she told me her name was Helena. I made a Shakespeare joke. She laughed, and that was it. For the rest of the night, I mostly talked to her, while my friends mingled with her group. As the evening went on, we reached the point where we had to decide whether to go our separate ways, meet again another time, or go back together. We chose the last option. We went back to my place, being careful not to wake my parents since I was still living at home, and spent the night together. Long story short, we ended up dating for a while, always meeting somewhere in town and then going back to my place. Eventually, we became an official couple and started doing more typical couple activities. That is when the instability began to show. She started arguing with me about every little thing, from not saying hello the right way to not being there to wake her up at precisely 6:01 or 9 in the morning or whatever time she decided. Every argument escalated into whatever she chose to rant about and always ended the same way. She would threaten to break up with me. I would calm her down, we would make up, and everything would seem fine again. After about a month and a half of this, I grew tired of it. I did the decent thing and took her out for coffee at a cozy cafe. I explained as kindly as I could that the relationship was not working out. It seemed surprisingly amicable, except it was not. The phone calls began, always from a private number, always with crying. At first, she called my mobile, then my home phone. If I did not answer, my parents would speak politely to her and then hand the phone to me, and suddenly the crying would intensify. Then came the emails, long rambling messages filled with threats, pleas, and nonsense. There were hundreds of them. Some days they arrived every 5 minutes, other days there were none at all. I changed my mobile number and had our home number removed from public listings. I also changed my email address. The messages continued for about 6 months, but eventually they stopped. That should have been the end of it. It was not. I started spending more time online, on various forums and games. On one forum, I became friends with a girl. I knew she was real because she sent photos of herself holding a piece of paper with a handwritten message that included my username. We had great conversations and seemed to have an unbelievable amount in common. She was a beautiful brunette, very much the classic English rose type. Eventually, we started an online relationship and had regular Skype calls. Although she never used her camera, I did not mind. Things began well, but over time she became too clingy for me. If I was even a minute late, she would ask where I had been. She would get jealous if she saw a photo of me on Facebook with another girl. She became upset easily and angry if I mentioned any other woman's name, even in harmless situations like saying a lecturer named Louise had complimented my work. Eventually, I grew frustrated and ended things. The breakup was clean. I avoided those forums and changed my Skype account, given my previous experiences with communication issues. Without learning much from it, I joined different forums, met another girl, and started getting to know her as well. This one was a tanned, attractive blonde with an Australian accent. She liked most of the same things I did, but we also had enough differences to teach each other new things and share new interests. She was laid back, and compared to my previous ex, she felt like a breath of fresh air. If I showed up on Skype half an hour late, she did not mind. If I spent an entire conversation complaining about my lecturer, repeating her name every few sentences, she would join in and make me laugh. Eventually, I started talking about meeting her. It was a long and expensive trip from England to Sydney, but I was willing to make it. I wanted to see her in person, visit the places she had told me about, and finally have a real in-person relationship. As soon as I suggested it, she broke up with me, saying I would only be disappointed by the reality. Then there was the next girl. She was Canadian, brunette, and more of a rock type, completely different from my usual preference. We met on a random chat site, started talking, and exchanged contact details. She introduced me to a lot of music I had never considered before, and I did the same for her. If I complained about something, she told me to toughen up. If I arrived late, she would joke that time was just an illusion. She was one of the coolest people I had ever known. Once again, we dated online and talked about meeting. Once again, she ended things, saying it had only ever been for fun. It was calm and amicable, and that was that. All of this happened over a couple of years. Each relationship lasted between 4 and 6 months, with breaks of about 1 to 3 months in between. I moved on quickly and did not dwell on rebounds. Anyway, I went back to my hometown for the holiday. I think it was reading week, and I did not feel like staying on campus. I was walking along the road when I ran into Helena. Instead of avoiding her, I kept walking. She came up to me and said she had something important to tell me and that we needed to talk. I made several excuses, but she dismissed each one until I gave in. We went to a pub, and she told me something that genuinely frightened me. She said she had not wanted to give up on me, so she used what she knew about me to track down the places I visited online. She created multiple accounts hoping to find me so she could talk to me and try to win me back. She used fake profiles so I would not immediately recognize or ignore her. Every girl I had dated online had actually been her. She used photos of other people, faked accents, and pretended not to know things she clearly did. She followed me across at least a dozen different websites, reading hundreds of posts and threads, all while convincing me I was speaking to entirely different people. After that, I did not date anyone for a couple of years. I do not know what happened to her. She disappeared from my life, and I have not seen her since. I briefly dated a few other women, but only ones I had met in person, and none of them resembled her. I still do not know whether she follows me online, or if she might see this, but if she does, hello Helena. Story 13. I think I was around 18. We had been dating for about 8 months, and I broke up with him because my parents were treating me differently, which put too much strain on both my relationship and my relationship with them. I couldn't handle it. About a week after the breakup, he showed up at my parents' house wanting to talk. My mom answered the door and I didn't want any part of it, so she told him to leave. He became belligerent and eventually left, so my mom called the police. He was pulled over, given a warning, and then released. Later that day, my dad was at work. My mom had taken my sister somewhere, and I was playing Mario Party 8 on my Wii at home. There was a knock at the back door. I looked through the glass from the couch, and he was there, looking in and trying to talk to me. I ignored him. He got mad and shouldered the door. The frame cracked. He tried again, and the door burst open. I said, "What the hell are you doing?" He grabbed me, put me over his shoulder, and carried me outside. I initially thought he would put me in the front seat and drive off, but then he popped the trunk with the remote. That's when I realized what was going to happen. I twisted a little, which surprised him, and he dropped me, but then he put me in a headlock so I couldn't breathe. I stopped struggling. He tossed me in the trunk, shut it, and drove off. At this point, I was doing everything I could to get out of the trunk. It was a Buick LeSabre, the model with no way to open it from the inside. I started kicking the back of the seats, eventually prying one open enough to stick my head out and get some air. It was August, and outside was 95 degrees, so inside the trunk must have been around 110. I got my head out and could finally breathe. He had calmed down a bit, and I realized he just wanted to talk, so he wasn't aggressive when I climbed into the back seat. When he had put me in the trunk, some neighbor kids had been outside and saw what was happening. They ran inside to tell their parents, who called the police. My mom was driving like crazy to get home. My ex drove me an hour and a half away to an old camp he used to go to, and we talked for a while. He then took me to Pizza Hut because I said I was hungry. I remember wondering why no one seemed concerned that I was waiting for a pizza without shoes or socks. I later learned that an Amber Alert had already been issued. He then decided he didn't want to go to jail and went back to his workplace to get his shotgun. When he got there, the police were waiting and tried to taser him. They missed, and he jumped back into his car and did a backwards U-turn, driving through the city at 60 to 85 miles per hour. If you've never been in a high-speed police chase, it is a rush. So much adrenaline. He tried to get on the highway, but the police had blocked it with spike strips, so he turned onto a back road that dead-ended and crashed into a tree. By this time, I was in the front seat. The cops swarmed the car, pulled us both out, and not realizing who we were, handcuffed us, and put us in separate patrol cars. Once everything was sorted, they uncuffed me and transported me back to the police station in my city. My parents and sister were there, terrified and relieved to see I was okay. The whole ordeal lasted around 10 hours. My ex was 4 years old at the time and is now out of jail in a halfway house. Story 14. My first girlfriend once tried to convince me that she was a 300-year-old succubus in the middle of a makeout session. At the time, I thought she was joking, trying to make things a little steamier or whatever. We kept going and then went our separate ways. The next time I saw her, she had this really depressed, aloof look about her. So I asked what was going on. She was still going on about being a succubus, and I told her it was funny, but she should give it a rest. She got mad and said she missed her master's castle back in Europe. At that point, I wasn't sure what to do. She was clearly drinking the Kool-Aid and was certifiably bonkers, but I really wanted to, needless to say, I noped the F out of there and didn't talk to her for a long time. P.S. That kind of screwed me over for future relationships because now I have no idea how to deal with a normal girl. Haven't had a girlfriend since. Help. Story 15. My ex broke my PlayStation 3 after I failed to tell her I was working late. She thought I was cheating. If we were not together, we had to be texting for 10 minutes without a reply, and I would receive an angry phone call. She was so shy that it was limiting, and I could only see her topless if she felt it was right. Everything I owned got broken because she was mad at the silliest things. I lost all my friends because she did not approve of them and eventually cut me off from them. If she bought me lunch or food, she would make sure I paid her back in full later, even though I always bought her everything. The same went for gifts. If she spent a certain amount of money on my present, I would have to spend an equal or greater amount. Story 16. My first boyfriend smacked me around a bit when I was rude or disobedient, chased me down a street at 1 a.m., tried to strangle me, and showed up at my house one afternoon while I was home alone, climbing through a window to surprise me. When I asked him to leave, he went berserk. He grabbed a hockey stick and tried to destroy everything, smashing the microwave, the oven, the television, 2 walls, a 20-year-old houseplant, and 6 of the 8 panes of glass in the French doors. The neighbors heard what they thought were 6 gunshots and called the police. A restraining order was enforced for 3 years. Once it expired, he showed up at my new house just to talk. I told him no and threatened to call the cops if he didn't leave. He left, and I ended up leaving the country. Story 17. I had a boyfriend in high school who was verbally abusive. I broke up with him, thinking we would just go our separate ways. Boy, was I wrong. He went and literally cried to the guidance counselor. She pulled us both out of class, and Bradley and I had to talk it out. I told her I didn't want to be with him because he yelled at me all the time and freaked out over anything he deemed wrong, which was basically everything. He was the one who punched a hole in the wall of our economics class, but she didn't care. We couldn't leave until it was resolved, which meant we were forced to get back together. I finally got out of that relationship when we went to different schools. Later, he ended up in rehab and would have people sneak me letters. Looking back, it was crazy, and I was foolish for not doing more to rid myself of him sooner and permanently. Story 18. I went out of town for my best friend's wedding, at which I was a bridesmaid. I didn't take my boyfriend at the time, per the bride's request. It was her day, and since my boyfriend and I were on the outs at the time, I didn't mind. He has ADD and hadn't refilled his medication before I left for 4 days. This is when his meltdown started. At first, everything was okay. We texted back and forth, but I couldn't reply quickly because, well, I was helping with a wedding. He overdosed on Valium and told me he was wandering outside, then didn't answer his phone for 6 hours. I was panicking because I was 6 hours away from home and had no idea if he had wandered off in his impaired state. I broke down, and my best friend's stepdad, an ex-cop, sat with me and explained my options from afar. Eventually, I sent my apartment manager over to check on him. Apparently, he had just fallen asleep because he had taken so many drugs. On the actual day of the ceremony, he flipped out again because I didn't have time to talk to him at all. Tensions were high for the wedding party as we pushed to get the ceremony started. I left my phone in my bag while helping the bride and groom, and when I checked it later, I had no less than 10 voicemails and more than 30 texts, half of them incoherent. This continued throughout the entire weekend. I stopped responding. When I came home, I found my blinds torn, my DVD player smashed, cooking oil spilled all over my kitchen floor, which I had to clean up because apparently it was my fault he knocked it over while I was out of town, and my entire nail polish collection, over 50 colors, destroyed. I'm still finding cracked bottles. It's amazing I haven't died from all those fumes. Red-colored Kool-Aid had been splashed everywhere, even inside kitchen drawers. I have no idea how that happened. He didn't apologize for any of it. His only words were, "You made me do it. If you hadn't ignored me, this would have never happened." We are no longer together, of course, but this was just one episode of many. This man will be 30 next month. I pity his next girlfriend. Edit, the incident happened last year, so this was a 29-year-old man throwing temper tantrums. Story 19. She called me and said we needed to talk right now. Uh-oh. I dropped what I was doing and went over, and she dropped a bombshell. She was pregnant. After the most stressful half hour of my life, she told me she wasn't actually pregnant and just wanted to see what I would do if she were. I noped out of that relationship immediately, by which I mean I continued seeing her for another month because, well, sticking your dong in crazy is still fun. Story 20. One of my exes was convinced that I was cheating on her with both my mother and my sister, so whenever I spent time alone with either of them, I was bombarded with text messages and phone calls. When my mother's sister and I went on a family vacation to New York City, she insisted that I sleep on the hotel's fire escape because she thought I was going to do it with them. Edit. Oh, and she also believed that when I talked to my sister on the phone, my tone of voice suggested I was trying to seduce her into having phone SM. Story 21. I was sitting on my front porch with a girl who lived down the block. We were hooking up after I had recently broken up with my psychotic, drug-addicted ex-girlfriend for cheating on me. A silver car rolled by that I recognized as belonging to one of her friends. As it passed my house, the back door opened, and out rolled my screaming, crying ex. She hit the concrete at 10 miles per hour, then jumped up with a baseball bat and started screaming that she was going to off the other girl. I got the other girl inside my house and tried to calm her down. Only the threat of calling the police made my ex leave. Story 2021. My ex-boyfriend and I dated for a year and a half. He seemed normal, had a social life, played hockey, was decent looking. He was Jewish, which didn't bother me, but apparently me being Catholic was an issue. A year and a half into the relationship, he told me that I'd need to convert to Judaism or we wouldn't be able to progress in our relationship. I was taken aback and told him I'd think about it. I knew I wouldn't, but I didn't know what else to say at the moment. Shortly after, I discovered that he had been cheating on me with women, men, and trans on Craigslist. I found out while looking through my laptop's browser history for school websites that he had closed. While searching, I came across a random Hotmail account that had been logged into a few times over the months. I logged in using the only password he had for everything, and there it was, M4M, M4T, meetups dating back months. Some of them even included price lists. He was pricing himself. After a brief burst of "oh my god, what the F's" and tears of disgust and frustration, I pulled myself together, turned on my printer, and printed everything out. The stack of emails was about 2 inches thick. Note, all the emails were time and date stamped for times that he had been studying at the university library. I suppose he failed stats because he was too busy railing bros and hoes in handicapped bathroom stalls. Definitely not something you can explain to your parents easily. I was expecting him to stop by shortly since he was out playing shinny with my roommate/squatter. As soon as they walked in, I told him, with the straightest face I could hold, to go to the bedroom. I tried to remain calm to get the answers I wanted. I asked him if he was gay. No. I asked if he was sure. He was. Then what the hell is this? I threw the papers at him. He didn't know what to say except, "Where did you get these?" Even though he knew exactly where I got them. He had nothing to say. "It would be a shame if your hockey team found out about this one," he muttered. I made him leave after that, but not before packing all his stuff in garbage bags. Story 23. Not sure if this is crazy, but this is the tale of how I broke myself. One winter day, I was with 3 of my friends and my girlfriend at the time. We were just hanging out at the local ghetto coffee shop, sipping coffee to combat the harsh Canadian winter. Everything was fine until suddenly my girlfriend started to cry. Not a laughing too hard kind of cry, more like Mufasa dying kind of cry. Like any boyfriend, I turned to her and asked what was wrong. She then looked at me and said these exact words, "There's a hole in my donut." My friends lost their collective minds. They were on the cold floor, dying of laughter. One of them even had to run outside just to try to calm down, because the sight of her laughing made him laugh even harder. Then there was me. When I heard that, I froze. I showed no expression, said no word, didn't laugh. She effectively made me go brain dead. I couldn't even process anything for a good 10 minutes before I finally replied, "It's gonna be okay." Story 24. I started seeing a girl, and within a week of talking to her, she began sending me pictures of wedding cakes and other wedding-related things. I was immediately turned off and wrote her off as overly obsessive, but I was still attracted to her and continued the relationship. Later, we both got really sick with the flu and sinus infections. I have health insurance thanks to an awesome job with benefits, so I recovered quickly, while she remained sick. I dropped off some of my extra medicine to her, and the next thing I know, she starts talking to her ex, breaks up with me, and claims I was the obsessive one. I'm still trying to figure that one out. One moment we're talking about getting married, and the next she won't even speak to me. Story 25. He ended up in the dryer at my apartment complex in the middle of the night, completely bare and crying. Yes, you read that correctly, and no, I am not making this up. I wish I were. I met this guy on Occupied, and he really was a nice guy, if a little strange and good-looking too. We dated for several months, during which he slowly revealed that he was hearing things that he could not possibly hear. He claimed our upstairs neighbors or my roommate were talking about him, even though I could not hear a thing, and he started to become paranoid. This all came to a climax one night when we were at a comedy club with some of my friends. He had been acting strange all night and thought my friends hated him and were talking about him from a couple of feet away. They were not. I was sitting between them, and they had even told me previously that they liked him. He left before the show started, and I did not see him again until 8 months later. My roommate was getting ready for work one morning. She gets up around 5:30 a.m. She heard strange noises coming from the laundry room, which shared a wall with our apartment hallway. She assumed the loud wailing sounds were coming from our neighbor's eccentric friend and that she would have to deal with her when she went to get her bike. But when she entered the laundry room, she could not see anyone and was unsure where the sound was coming from. She searched around, looking under the table across from the washer and dryer, when she heard the dryer door being pulled shut. I know, horror movie stuff. She was about to open the door, brave as she is, but thought better of it and went to wake me up for help, since I work in mental health. Story 26. I know grieving can make people do crazy things, but I dated a guy for 5 years, from 16 to 23, and we moved to a larger city than where we had originally grown up. Eventually, the relationship deteriorated, and we parted ways. He stayed in the larger city while I planned to move back to the smaller city. Long story short, we were in a limbo, chasing each other across Canada, not wanting things to end. I eventually decided that the larger city is where I wanted to call home, so I settled in while he moved back across the country to the smaller city. Once my mind was made up, I told him that I would be seeing other men. That's when things escalated. He had memorized my passwords, logged into my accounts, changed them, and told me I would not get access back until I paid him the $400 I supposedly owed him from moving. The costs did not add up, and I was furious. He was blackmailing me and trying to manipulate and control me. Scary stuff in hindsight. Either way, I copied and pasted the conversation where he was calling me a slut and threatening me and sent it to his mother. Within 20 minutes of sending the message, all my accounts were restored, and we never spoke again. It has been 5 years. Story 27. After 4 months of dating, we were at the on-again, off-again stage of breaking up. 4 days after we broke up, she ended up sleeping with her ex-boyfriend. I said, okay, fair game, and just focused on living my single life. A few days later, after finding out she had been with her ex, I went clubbing and ended up making out with 4 women in one night. She found out about this and flipped out at me. We worked together at a restaurant, so it was not pretty, but apparently what I did was way worse in her eyes. She is currently dating that ex-boyfriend again. A few months after they got back together, he sent me this gem on Facebook. Did you seriously go around telling friends you were a victim ages ago? Wow, man, you're a bigger wuss than I thought. You should really think about what you say. Not everyone is your friend. Lucky I'm not so rude. Otherwise, I'd punch your friggin' teeth out, and we all know I can. He deleted his Facebook right after sending that. Apparently, his girlfriend had been arguing with some of my friends about the concept of being a slut, and one of my friends brought up the time she slept with him after our breakup. Lose is lose. Story 28. My ex tried to get people at a St. Patrick's Day party last year to fight me by lying. She claimed I was going to drive drunk and that I abused her. She made a huge scene, then lied to her family the next day saying that I had abused her while drunk, all because she couldn't admit to anyone that she just wasn't feeling it anymore and wanted to be with one of my friends. He turned her down, so she cheated on me with an older guy, and she's been in a relationship with him ever since. The worst part was the lying to her family. I never abused her, especially not while drunk. That was actually something she did to me. But the absolute worst part was what dating her made me realize about myself. If I was willing to love someone who could treat me that badly, then I probably shouldn't date anyone for a while. Thankfully, I haven't been in a committed relationship for about a year now, and nobody can hurt me like that again. Story 29. The crazy abounds with my most recent ex, so I'll keep it short and just tell you how we broke up. We had been together for 3 years, and the last year had been really turbulent. One night, right after the Sandy Hook shooting, my ex said he could have done a better job. Mortified, but hoping he was kidding, I basically just asked, what the hell? He launched into some diatribe about how the shooter gave himself a job to do, and that if you were going to go through that much effort, you better do a better job than only harming a few children. He claimed he would have done so much better because he is really good and disciplined at airsoft. Not only is this man almost 30 and a medical care professional, but he also got livid with me when I told him he was talking crazy. He became so irate and aggressive that, faced with his obsession over harming innocent children, I left. And boy, do I feel good. Story 3030. I unfriend-zoned this guy once. In the first 4 weeks of dating, he talked about marrying me, having children with me, tried to force me to wear a G-string, started naming our future kids, and even wanted to tattoo my name on his chest. He couldn't afford it, so he carved my name into his arm with a knife instead. To this day, he still has it there. Story 31. My ex from 10 years ago is getting married very soon. Her current girlfriend and she were friends in high school, so the ex invited my girlfriend to the reception on the other side of the country. Not the wedding, mind you, just the reception. I was uneasy because my ex's family had done some less than graceful things to me back in the day, simply because I wasn't a member of their church. Her mother, for one, came very close to hitting me with a car out of anger, because she believed I was threatening my ex's soul and her place in the family. Basically, I wasn't confident that my girlfriend wouldn't face similar hostility because of her association with me. My girlfriend gave her friend fair warning. She is no longer active in their mutual church, and we are currently living together. Instead of responding with understanding, friendship, and unconditional love, the way her beloved church claims she should, my ex went batcrap. In an email, she tried to lie to my girlfriend to break us up. She attempted to convince her that I had been abusive to the ex, and somehow claimed she knew I was abusing my girlfriend, even though she herself doesn't realize what actually happened. If anything, I was the one mistreated by her family. She went on to say my girlfriend should dump me or get away from me, rounding it out with snide, judgmental, and most importantly, hypocritical remarks about chastity and morality. Thankfully, my girlfriend saw through it. It still hurt, having a friend turn on you like that. But aside from finally telling her a few more details of my side from 10 years ago, I had little to defend myself with. The funny thing is, my ex even gave my girlfriend her blessing about me some 5 years ago. There was no warning of abuse, none of this. It's all new. From what I can figure, my ex has to account for past indiscretions. To get married in her church, you must pass very strict rules about sexuality, which she would notably fail. I imagine the only choice left for her was either to lie about her past or blame someone else. I guess I am one of her scapegoats. Story 32. Not my ex, but my current boyfriend's ex. I don't know the intricacies of their relationship, and I'm not all that interested. I've managed to glean a few things just from everyone I've met telling me how awesome I am. She, I'll call her Crazy, was rather young and moved across the country to be with him after he asked her not to. Crazy made enemies with almost everyone she met here. She even forbade my boyfriend from interacting with the opposite gender. He was tolerant of it, justifying that at least she wasn't a bitch to him. That didn't last long, and neither did they. Crazy then started the breakup with me and I'll off myself routine, and claimed, I'm pregnant so you can't leave me. There might have been more, I'm not sure, but eventually she moved back to her home state and got pregnant pretty quickly by another guy. All of this happened before I started talking to my boyfriend. He and I knew each other in college, but we weren't exactly on speaking terms at that time, and he was a grade ahead of me. We randomly started talking after he graduated and moved out of state, but our communication was infrequent at best for the next few years, while he dated Crazy and other girls, not simultaneously. Needless to say, I definitely did not know this woman. To this day, I've never met Crazy. A few months after my boyfriend and I started seriously doing the long-distance thing, Crazy decided to mess with us. She started stalking me. The two crucial things she found out were my WoW account and when I was flying to see my boyfriend, neither of which I had publicized. I assume she got the information through a mutual friend of hers and my boyfriend's. She created a fake profile on a social networking site, pretending to be a girl moving out to where he lives and just looking for friends. She tried to flirt, ask him out alone, and generally manipulate him. Everything was documented in the fake account, saved messages and conversations. Her plan was to WoW message me the login information after she had enough evidence, so I could log in and see that he was flirting with this fake girl, avoiding talking about me, and planning a date where he would show up to find no one there. She wanted to send me this before I flew out or while I was visiting, so the trip would be ruined. According to her, it was for my own good. Crazy was just trying to save me from him. I'm not that addicted to WoW, so I didn't notice anything until I got back. When I did, I admit I blew my top. However, further examination revealed nothing incriminating. Little did she know, while she thought he was falling for the fake girl, he had actually been telling me about her. He was a bit creeped out, but thought maybe she just wanted to make friends in a new place. When I told him how I had discovered the account, he, his brother, and all his friends instantly knew it was Crazy. His brother even jumped on the phone to help calm me down, because she had done this before. While dating my boyfriend, she had previously created a fake profile to interrogate another one of his exes. I decided to indulge my petty side and change the login to the fake account, setting it up to insult her. Of course, it was taken down as a fake profile, which pissed Crazy off immensely. I also found her blog, I can't even recall how, and discovered posts she put on a forum asking people how and when to get revenge on him, because she thought he cheated on her with me. I don't know how she could have come to that conclusion, since she was already pregnant and a few states away when he and I started dating. But considering her psycho track record, it's not shocking that she did. I was afraid of what she might try next. She had been threatening paternity lawsuits despite knowing who the father was, so I printed off her plans, plots, threats, and confessions. If she was going to make my life hell, I wasn't going to be caught off guard in a courtroom. I used my work printer because mine at home was on the fritz. Silly me, her blog logged my IP, and since she had been stalking me, of course she knew where I worked. She contacted my HR department and accused me of harassing her from work and tried to get me fired. It didn't work because it wasn't true. Viewing public information isn't harassment, but considering my line of work, I was encouraged to file a complaint with the FBI regarding internet harassment. I also had to contact Blizzard to have her baby daddy's account banned or suspended, since she was using his account to harass me, with his permission and encouragement. It's been 4 years since they broke up, and 3 years since he and I started dating, but Crazy hasn't let go, not really. When I moved to be with him, she sent a passive-aggressive email. When we moved into our own place after living with a group of people, she sent another. He blocks her phone numbers, but she still finds ways to text him. She's not a physical threat, but she did call my boyfriend on Valentine's Day to tell him about a dream or worry. I can't even recall. I believe she's married now with 2 kids, yet she still finds the time to follow what my boyfriend is doing, what we're doing. It's ridiculous. We have never responded, not once. I just keep adding things to my FBI complaint. I doubt anything will come of it, but if something ever does, it will be there for CYA's sake.
Story 33. A girl I had a thing for in high school, and I started dating long distance, which was probably a mistake. Things were fine for a bit. She moved away, told me she was working as a nurse and living with a friend. I thought everything was good. A couple of months later, she called and said she was really scared. She thought she might be pregnant. I had not been intimate with her. When I asked what happened, she said she had gotten drunk at a club, taken a guy home, and the condom broke. I was furious, but I had it so bad for this girl that I stayed with her. About a month later, she called again and said she wanted to tell me the truth. The friend she had been living with was someone she met online for banging, a female friend. They moved in together, and she started working for her friend's business, not as a nurse. Her friend ran an escort service. She had been working as an escort for the last few months. The pregnancy scare was not from some drunken mistake at a club. It was one of her clients. She told me the client asked her to keep it quiet because his kid was upstairs napping and to hurry because his wife would be home soon. She said she gave him an erotic massage and slept with him. I was in shock and told her I would call her back. A friend of mine talked some sense into me and told me never to speak to her again because she was bad news. I called her back and told her I did not want to talk anymore. After that, I received dozens of calls and texts saying, "Pick up your phone or I am driving out to Kansas and I will off you." I did not respond. I am still here, so at least there is that. Years later, she told me she was fully lesbian and had been using me as a beard the entire time. Bitches be crazy. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.